I had an idea about how sad and unlucky my sister was, and in that moment, I came up with what I thought was the perfect plan. What kind of plan? Someone asked. Just watch and see, I answered. Mary, full of confidence, put on a fancy dress, the kind you'd expect to see at a wedding or some elegant ceremony. She strutted up to the microphone as if she owned the stage. With her chin lifted high, she turned to the guests, smiling sweetly but speaking words sharp as knives. "Does anyone want to marry my sister?" she announced. "She's not very smart, and she's getting old." The room fell into a heavy silence. Right after she said it, Mary turned her gaze to me, her lips curling into a mean little smile. She thought she was being clever, but she didn't realize how cruel she sounded. Whispers began spreading across the room like a ripple in water. I caught the disapproving stares of several guests. Some even shook their heads in disbelief. But Mary, blind to the change in atmosphere, carried on with her performance. She snatched the microphone again and laughed lightly, as though the first insult hadn't landed hard enough. "Come on, sister," she said, tilting her head toward me. "You need to make yourself more appealing. There are plenty of handsome doctors here. Do you really understand what you've done? Do you?" Her words hung in the air like poison, stinging me deeply. I felt my chest tighten. But just as the humiliation weighed on me, something major, something I could never have predicted, happened. My name is Amy Schumer. I'm 31 years old, and by most accounts, I live a fairly ordinary life. I have a steady job, I pay my bills, and I mind my own business. There's nothing remarkable about me, except for one thing. I fought tooth and nail to become a lawyer. That part of my story begins long before today, back when I was just a quiet girl overshadowed by my younger sister. Mary is 3 years younger than me, and from the moment she was born, it seemed as if the world bent in her favor. She was charming, cheerful, and always seemed to know how to make people like her. Teachers adored her, relatives spoiled her, and my parents treated her as though she were the sun itself. And me? I was plain, average, not particularly pretty, not particularly outgoing. I didn't shine like Mary did, and so I was left in the shadows. My family rarely noticed me, and when they did, it was usually to point out what I lacked. While Mary was showered with affection for her effortless charm, I worked myself to the bone. I studied late into the night, striving to bring home perfect grades, hoping that maybe, just maybe, my parents would notice me. But no matter how high my scores were, it was never enough. "It's not just about being at the top," my mother would scold, her tone cold and sharp. "You need perfect scores in every subject. 98% isn't good enough." I tried to explain how difficult the exams were, but my words were brushed aside as excuses. "Again, your lack of effort shows," my father would add, dismissing all my struggles. All I could do was bow my head and whisper, "Yes, I'm sorry." But the real dagger to my heart wasn't my parents' constant disappointment, it was Mary's mocking voice. "Oh, sister, are you getting lectured again?" she would say as she barged into my room, smirking as she held my report card. "Good grades and still scolded? That's so sad. I barely pass and get praised." "Did you come here just to say that?" I would ask, frustration bubbling inside me. "I was worried about you," she'd reply with fake innocence, her eyes gleaming with mischief. "But I didn't expect you to be so cold. If you were really worried, you wouldn't talk to me like that," I'd say, trying to keep my voice steady. "See, that's your problem," she would snap back. "You're always standoffish. That's why Mom and Dad don't love you." Her words cut deeper than any report card ever could. When she left the room, I'd often hear her laughter echoing in the living room as she entertained our parents. Meanwhile, I sat alone with tears streaking my cheeks, clutching my wrinkled report card. I told myself over and over that I didn't need my family's approval. I told myself I was strong enough to ignore Mary's cruel words. But the truth? Every word, every cold look, left a mark. So I made a decision. If I couldn't win their love, I would at least build a life of my own. My worth would not come from their approval, it would come from my knowledge, my achievements, and the future I carved with my own hands. One spring day, as the breeze drifted through the classroom windows, my father shattered that fragile dream. "Amy," he said flatly, "you won't be going to high school. Start looking for a job immediately." I stared at him, stunned. Why would you say something like that? I asked, my voice trembling. There's no point in investing in you anymore, he said coldly. If you want to continue, pay for it yourself. Otherwise, give it up. But I'm still in middle school. What job can I possibly? I stopped when I realized he wasn't listening. He had already made up his mind. After discussing it with your mother, we've decided to put our resources into Mary. We can't afford both of you. His words hit me like thunder, leaving me numb. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught Mary's satisfied smirk and my mother's faint smile. They didn't even bother hiding their delight at my despair. It was in that moment that I truly understood. I had no place in their hearts. Back then, I didn't know about scholarships or tuition waivers. I didn't have anyone to guide me, no one to tell me that doors could still open if I fought for them. All I saw was the end of my education. The fire I once had for learning flickered out. Even the praise from my homeroom teacher, who admired my persistence, felt hollow. Without support, college felt like an impossible dream. So, after middle school, I took a job at a local factory. I worked long hours, handed over most of my paycheck to my family, and saved whatever scraps I could. Day after day, it felt like I was crawling through a dark, endless tunnel. Finally, on my 19th birthday, I found the strength to leave. I wrote a short letter to my family, placed it on the table, and walked out. Their response? Silence. No calls, no letters, no attempts to bring me back. It was as if I had never existed. At first, the loneliness was unbearable, but slowly, work filled my days, and the distance brought me peace. For the first time, I could breathe. For the first time, I could think about myself. And then, something incredible happened. I rediscovered my love for learning. I began studying on my own, starting with the basics. Each night, after long hours at the factory, I would read textbooks, scribble notes, and solve problems. The more I studied, the more alive I felt. Eventually, I stumbled upon books on law. They fascinated me, pulling me into a new world of reasoning, fairness, and justice, things I had never known at home. That's when I learned about the preliminary examination system, a path that could allow someone like me, someone without a traditional high school education, to one day sit for the bar exam. The thought of it lit a fire in me again, and this time, I swore nothing and no one would take it away. Studying became my lifeline. I used every spare moment I had. Even 10-minute breaks at the factory were enough to flip through flashcards or memorize legal terms, while other workers sat down to chat or rest during lunch. I hunched over my notebook, tracing laws and cases with tired but determined eyes. Some of my colleagues, many of them twice my age, would chuckle at first, but eventually, they came to admire me. "This girl never wastes a second," they'd whisper. Soon they were cheering me on, offering encouragement, and sometimes even covering a small part of my shift so I could take an extra hour to study before an exam. Their quiet support became the family I never had. At 24, after years of exhaustion, endless nights of study, and countless moments of doubt, I passed the bar exam. Holding that certificate in my hands felt like holding a key to a door I thought had been locked forever. With trembling hands, I packed up my belongings, left the factory behind, and stepped into a new world. I started as an associate at a prestigious law firm. The transition was overwhelming at first, suits instead of uniforms, boardrooms instead of factory floors, but I adapted. 5 years of training taught me discipline, resilience, and the finer points of navigating both law and people. By the time I was 30, I felt ready to stand on my own. That's when I opened my own practice. Now I serve as the legal consultant for a hospital, a role I take pride in every single day. Each case I handle, each problem I resolve, reminds me of how far I've come. Still, sometimes, when the office is quiet, I wonder, what if I told my parents? Would they finally look at me with pride instead of disdain? Would they smile at me the way they always smiled at Mary? But deep down, I know the truth. No matter what I achieve, their hearts will never change. I was determined never to go back, but fate had other plans. One evening, after a long day at the hospital, I glanced at my phone. A new message blinked on the screen. It was from Mary. She was getting married. I froze for a moment, staring at her words. Then, almost without realizing it, I whispered aloud, Mary is getting married. My younger sister, now 29, was engaged to a doctor. Their wedding would be next month. The message ended with the details of the ceremony and a single, sharp reminder: don't forget the wedding gift. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. Even after all these years, Mary hadn't changed. The gift mattered more to her than my presence. Still, I decided to attend. Perhaps part of me wanted to see them once more, to confirm what I already knew, that I had nothing left to seek from my family. On the day of the wedding, I wore a tailored blue dress and entered the hall with quiet confidence. The venue was lavish, chandeliers glimmered overhead, and polished marble reflected the glow of candles. Guests mingled in clusters, laughter filling the air. I walked to the family area where my parents were seated. Their eyes widened as they saw me, but not with joy. "You've got some nerve showing up here," my father muttered coldly. "I thought you'd be busy scraping by at your little factory job." "Indeed," my mother added, her lips curling. "It's shameful to have someone like you in the family." "Mary shouldn't have invited you," my father said firmly. "I told her the same," my mother replied, shaking her head, "but they were eager to take the wedding money anyway." Their words struck me like stones, but I kept my face calm. I had expected nothing less. As I looked around the room, a strange sense of recognition tugged at me. I spotted faces among the groom's side, colleagues from the hospital. My suspicion grew, and when I saw the groom clearly, I knew he was one of the doctors. This was more than coincidence, it was fate crossing our paths. The ceremony began. Mary, radiant in her gown, walked arm in arm with her groom, basking in the adoration of the crowd. Applause filled the hall. My parents proudly walked to the front, joining in every photograph, smiling wider than I had ever seen them smile at me. I stayed seated, quietly eating my meal, reminding myself not to let it wound me. Then Mary appeared at my table. Her smile looked warm, but her eyes carried that same sharpness from our childhood. "Big sis," she said sweetly, "it's been forever. Aren't you glad we're together again?" "Yes," I answered evenly. "The food is very good." She smirked. "You don't get meals like this at the factory, do you? You should feel grateful." Her words pierced, but I didn't react. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Did I hurt your feelings? I'm sorry, but really, aren't you a little jealous? After all, your little sister is marrying a doctor." I stayed silent, letting her talk. Then she whispered, almost gleefully, "Since I pity you, I came up with the perfect idea." I frowned. "What idea?" "Just watch and see," she said, her smile widening. And with that, she walked away. Moments later, Mary took the microphone. Standing tall in her gown, she addressed the guests. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, "many of you don't know this, but my sister is here today. She's older, still single, and struggling. I thought maybe, among all these successful people, someone could help mentor her." Laughter rippled awkwardly through the hall. My face burned. "What are you doing, Mary?" I demanded, standing from my seat. But she went on, her voice rising. "Even though she doesn't make much money and lives a very modest life, maybe someone here can help her improve her future." Gasps filled the room. Mary's smug smile deepened, and then, to my horror, my parents chimed in. "Yes," my father said, bowing slightly, "please be kind to her." "Yes," my mother added, "she needs help." The humiliation was unbearable. Anger surged inside me like fire. "Your games end here," I said firmly, my voice echoing through the hall. Mary blinked. "Huh? You'll soon see what you've done." Before she could reply, movement rippled through the groom's side. Doctors and nurses were standing up, shaking their heads. Leading them was the hospital director himself. "The bride's words are appalling," he declared, his voice stern. "We will not stay any longer." "Wait, please," the groom cried, rushing forward. "I'll speak to her. Please don't leave." But the director shook his head. Then he turned to the groom. "Do you not even know who her sister is?" The groom hesitated. "I only know she worked in a factory." The director's eyes blazed. "Ridiculous. She is a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, she is the legal advisor to our hospital." The hall fell silent. Shock painted the groom's face. My parents froze. Mary's smile vanished. The groom turned on her, furious. You mocked your own sister? Do you realize what you've done to my reputation? To yours? Mary stammered. I didn't know, I didn't mean. Enough, he snapped. Ignorance is no excuse. This marriage is over. Gasps filled the room as he tore off his ring and stormed out. The guests followed, leaving Mary kneeling in her gown, pale and shaking. Please, Amy, she cried, reaching for me, help me. I looked at her calmly. Help you? After everything you did? You brought this on yourself. If I had known you were a lawyer, she began desperately. I cut her off. If you had cared about me as a sister, you would have known. You never asked, never listened, you only mocked. Now you face the consequences of your choices. With that, I turned and walked away. Behind me, Mary's sobs echoed through the hall, but I didn't look back. In the months that followed, I heard whispers. Mary had quit her job, isolated at home, abandoned even by our parents, who now blamed her for the broken marriage. As for me, I live in peace, surrounded not by family by blood, but by colleagues and friends who value me for who I am. My life is steady, fulfilling, and my heart is light. Looking back, I see now that every struggle, every cruel word, shaped me into the woman I am today. And though my family may have tried to erase me, I've built a life that cannot be ignored.